I'm going to show you guys how I repurpose some rainbow cakes that I don't really use, how I switch up some rainbow cakes that I don't like, and how I repair one strokes and rainbow cakes. So I have a basic rainbow here. It's perfectly fine, but it just feels kind of boring to me. So what I want to do is switch up some of the colors. So I have these two rainbow cakes from Silly Farm that are perfectly fine cakes, but I just don't ever use them on the job and they're just sitting in my kit being totally wasted. So I want to do something with them. So I'm going to take this regular rainbow that I have and I'm going to remove some of the colors and I'm going to add in some secondary colors to see if I can liven it up a little bit. I prefer to use a sharp paring knife when I am making split cakes or trying to cut up my rainbow cakes, but do be careful. You can also use a sharp palette knife. If you haven't worked with face paint like this, it's very similar to clay, but every different brand of face paint can be a little different. Some are chalkier, some fall apart easier, some mold better, so you have to kind of play around with them and see if yours work well to do this or not. And you get really familiar with it over time, so just play around with it. But you can see all I'm doing is cutting out the colors that I don't want and then just popping them out, and they come out in these like perfect little strips so that I can repurpose those colors as well. So now I'm going to take my Caribbean Cool Cake because these are the colors that I really want to reincorporate into my other splits and into this rainbow. And I'm just going to use the color I took out as a template so that I don't have to guess how big it should be. I'm going to cut it out and place it right down into my old rainbow cake. So adding some secondary colors is just going to really brighten up this rainbow and make it a little bit more interesting. Silly Farm paint is very nice and malleable. It's soft enough without being chalky that it's really easy to do this with this kind of paint. There are other paints that just can be a little drier and it makes this process a little bit more difficult. It's not impossible, but you're going to have to spray the paint and kind of almost mix water in with it to get the same effect. This is going very smoothly and is super easy, as you can tell. So I'm kind of lucky here with the paint that I'm using. Okay, so now that my colors are in place, I'm gonna grab a baby wipe and just clean up my hands, and then I'm gonna press the colors down just to fill in any gaps and to make the surface a little smoother. This is a really good way to repurpose some rainbow cakes that you purchase that you might not like, or just a cake you don't use, or sometimes you purchase something online and it looks like one color and then you get it and it's really not the color palette you were looking for. Find a way to repurpose it. It'll save you money and you will waste less paint. So now it is time to try it out. I'm going to spray my sponge and get this loaded up and see if I like the color payoff a little bit better. All right, so here it is now compared to the first swatch. I'm really liking how that blue's popping out, but I'm not seeing the pink that I wanted to see. So I think I'm going to change it one more time. So I can tell the red is what is really overpowering the pink. So I'm going to remove the red and I'm going to put the orange strip right back in. And I think it's going to create more of that coral feel and lighten it up and give me just a really different feeling rainbow. So let's give this a try. Okay, yes, that is much better. I still have a traditional rainbow feel, but see how much brighter it is compared to that first swatch that now looks really dull compared to my new rainbow. So I am super happy with this, exactly what I wanted to do, and I am super excited. So now I'm going to repair one of my favorite one strokes. You can see that big hole that I have in the center of it and how the gold has really ridden all the way up. I tend to use this cake a lot and I use it heavily on the dark side. And the gold and metallics in general are very soft. So this happens often with cakes like this. So what I'm going to do is just cut the gold off of the plastic side and then take a wet wipe and push it down. So this is going to take that kind of mountain peak of gold that's pushed up the side and push it back down and flatten it out so that I can continue to repair the rest of the cake. See, it's already a little bit better and a little bit more level. Now, metallics are very, very soft, so it's pretty easy to manipulate metallics. Sometimes they can be so dry that it can be difficult. It just depends on the brand of paint you're using. Now, I do want to say that I also am somebody who just goes and buys new cakes, but the reason I was doing this is I was at a point where I had no intention of getting a new order anytime soon. I didn't need a ton of stuff. I just had a few of my favorites that needed to be adjusted and repaired. So I looked at what I had in my kit and I thought, what can I do to fix this before my next gig? And this is what I do. So I thought it was worth showing you guys. So the blue was also very worn down in the center, so I went ahead and grabbed that cake that I had the turquoise in that I was already cutting up, and I cut a small strip of that. I know there's a little bit of pink in there, but honestly, it's such a small amount of pink, I just really don't care, so that kind of stuff doesn't bother me. I'm not that much of a perfectionist when I do this kind of stuff, and this cake was like perfect for me to repair so many things with because it's got that beautiful gold in it, so I was able to rebuild up the gold side of this one stroke and fill it right up. So I'm going to go ahead and push that in. So now I've got my whole one side pretty much repaired. And then I decided to go ahead and add in that dark blue. So I'm going to cut it because I don't want that much dark blue. I want this to feel as much like my original one stroke as possible. It's going to be a little different in the end, but it's going to be so similar that it's a great way to quickly repair something when you know you have a gig and you want your like full cake back. So the dark black edge also did the same thing as the gold. You know, it like pushes up onto the edge. So there's actually a lot of paint that's just been pushed and peeked up onto that plastic edge. So all I did was cut it and push it back down so that now I have a flat, even surfaced one stroke again. So I'll go ahead and show you guys what this looks like. This is Nat's Blue Wren, which is one of my absolute all-time favorite one strokes. And there we go, a quick repair when I have no intention of ordering anything anytime soon, but I needed this cake to survive. It looks pretty good. Not bad, right? So now I'm going to show you guys how to repair this rainbow cake. This is my Summer Sunrise rainbow cake by Silly Farm, and this Caribbean Cool rainbow cake that I've been cutting up has that hot pink and that orange in there, and I know the orange is the same orange because they're both Silly Farm, and it's going to be perfect to repair this. So I'm going to go ahead and just cut out a piece of that orange, and I'm going to push it down in the center and kind of build that center back up. I am obsessed with the Summer Sunrise cake because it's the one that I use for unicorn horns. If you guys saw my last updated unicorn horn video, this is the cake I use. It has become my #1 used rainbow cake because every girl wants to be a unicorn, which you guys probably know. So I'm going to just grab a chunk of this orange. It's going to be probably like a little too much because I only have like a small hole to fill, but this paint is so soft and malleable that I'm just going to use my fingers and I'm just going to start pressing it down and building it up. And then my paring knife, I'm just going to cut off a little bit of that excess that I don't really need because I don't want it to be built up too much. I just want to repair it. So I'm just going to slice off a little bit and then take my wet wipe and push it back down, just like you would mold clay or a form of something. You can just manipulate it and press it down. If you are using wet wipes, please use a decent quality wet wipe. You know, wet wipes are very inexpensive and very cheap, but if you get the cheapest wet wipe, sometimes it leaves behind fibers, and you do not want fibers in your paint. So use a mediocre brand. I don't even know if there is a high-end brand of wet wipes. I just get mine at Sam's or Target or wherever I am. But I've used like the off-brand once and they were awful. So just beware when you are using wet wipes. But I find them to be a necessity when I am cutting up paint and doing this kind of repair stuff. So you can see it's not the prettiest repair in the world, but when I'm headed to an event, I like to have as full of paint as possible. So as long as I can paint with it and all the colors are where they're supposed to be, I'm happy. Okay, so looking at my kit, I had this one other really sad rainbow cake that has been really, really worn down, and I haven't been using it because of it. I think it's Fabulously Fierce by Diamond Effects, and it's an awesome cake, and I love it. So I don't have all the colors to repair it perfectly, but I know I can build it up into something cool, so I'm going to repair it the best I can. Now, since I have kind of a weird collection of colors left here and not even strips, I'm gonna have to piecemeal it together a little bit more than I did on the other cakes. But because this paint is soft and it's being very malleable and good and it's fresh enough and it's not old paint, it's gonna be just fine. So I'm just going to kind of cut it up and layer it in here so that it makes it a little bit easier for me to go press it in at the end and build this up. So I'm starting with the pink, then I'm going to repair the orange, and then I think I'm even going to put some turquoise in it. Now you can see the orange, I have kind of a larger piece that I was able to put in the middle, and then I'm just going to kind of fill in the corners. You kind of have to Frankenstein them together sometimes, but as long as your paint is moist enough, you can mold it back together so that it doesn't look that choppy. And I do like them to look as good as possible because aesthetically it bothers me when people's paint is like really chunky and crazy. So I couldn't handle that. So if you're going to do this, you have to have a little bit of patience and be willing to kind of put the work in to do it. But I think it's very, very worth it, especially if you have rainbow cakes or split cakes you don't use. Line them all up, put them on a table, and look at them and think to yourself, how can I combine these or change them so that it's a cake that I want to use and it's valuable to how I paint and the designs that I paint. And if you do that, you'll look at some of those splits you bought and some of those rainbow cakes you bought that you think were a waste of money and hopefully find a way to repurpose them. So what I'm doing here, since I don't have purple to fill in the purple side, I'm taking my wet wipe and I'm pressing it and pushing it to the side to make it thinner so that I can put something else in between there. And I have this turquoise, so I'm going to cut it in half and place it between the purple and the pink and see what that looks like. So now that I have all my colors in, I'm going to grab a fresh wet wipe and I'm just going to slowly start pressing those colors together and pushing the paint down and repairing all of those slits and cuts that I have in my face paint. Another thing you can do is take your spray bottle and spray it down with some water. That's going to add some moisture back into your paint and make it even more malleable so that you can really press some of those seams and cuts you made back together. That is something that is very necessary to do when you are dealing with drier paint or older paint as well. I, again, have been pretty lucky here. My paint is relatively new and it's really good quality, so I haven't had too many issues. So far I'm liking this. I think that was a good use of those additional colors that I already had from cutting up my split. So I'm going to go ahead and test this out and see what it looks like. All right, it's not bad. I wish the turquoise was a little bit thicker, but I only had so much of it. It's still a really cool cake, and I didn't change it too much. It looks pretty close to the original, so I am very happy with the repair, and now it feels a little fresher and a little fuller. As always, I hope this video was helpful. I hope it makes you look at some of those unused one strokes and split cakes and think to yourself, what can I do to actually utilize this paint? Or make an old split that I've never liked, one that I bought by mistake, into something that I'm going to use and love. Thanks so much for watching, everybody, and I will see you in my next video.